Hello everybody, welcome back to the Marauders Guild, and here we are with the behind the scenes special of Ahsoka Tano turned to the dark side. I was gonna do this last week, but I fell ill like right before I started recording, and everything I said just sounded awful, nasally. I couldn't get sentences out properly, so I just said, let's scrap that. We had to miss last week's upload, but don't worry, we'll be back on schedule starting today with this behind the scenes special. And today I'm gonna be going over things that not only were forgotten ideas, but also inspiration, because I want to make it very certain where these ideas come from. They're not all wholly original to a certain degree. They are inspired by other Star Wars stories that have already existed. I want to give you guys that too, because maybe you want to go check them out if you haven't already. Now, some of these inspirations for this particular story you probably have seen to some degree, but there's no harm in bringing them to the forefront. So before I even dive in to the episode by episode breakdown of this and give you guys my thought process in each one, I'm going to be starting off with those inspirations and everything. I'm going to have them on the screen here just so you can see them and know what to look for if you ever want to check them out for yourselves if you haven't already. Now, the biggest inspiration for this particular series, especially if you've seen it in its entirety, you might have been able to pick it out for yourself. That is Star Wars The Force Unleashed. In particular, the first game. Everything that I thought about in terms of what would Vader do with his apprentice, especially being Ahsoka Tano, I went back to the story of that game and really picked and chose and said, yeah, I can see this happening. But it, of course, being a little different considering that his apprentice in this story is Ahsoka Tano. And obviously in that, it was Galen Merrick, aka Starkiller. Now you can see some elements that I took from the Starkiller story and use it for the Ahsoka story. For instance, the mission where Vader says, I need you to prove your worth, go kill a Jedi. I ripped that almost exactly from the pages of The Force Unleashed, where Vader tells him to go hunt down Jedi like Ram Koda and Kazan Paratus, even Shakti in the original 2008 video game. So there is a lot of inspiration there. I mean, you can't think about Vader having an apprentice without going back to that story in some regard. I mean, it was a great telling. The use of Vader was great, and I really tried to emulate that with this particular story. So if you haven't played Force Unleashed before, definitely go out and play it. Here's a little hint I want to say as well. If you haven't played it, go find the low definition version of those games. The HD versions will be any version that's on the PC, the Xbox 360, the PS3. But go see if you can find the versions that were on the PS2 or any other console like that. They were vastly different in terms of the missions. A lot more missions were in the standard, and I guess you call it the standard definition version rather than the high definition version. If you find the standard definition version of that game, play it. There's something about it that is way better than the HD versions of the game. Not discrediting the HD versions, but I guarantee you will have more fun on the older version of that game than the version that's on 360 and PS3. But I'm leewaying there. Let me come back into frame here. And another inspiration, that being the Ahsoka novel. The Ahsoka Tano novel, written by E.K. Johnston, I believe, was the basis for this. This is where I start the story. If you see episode 1, which I'll talk about in a second, I have some elements in that first episode that were ripped straight from the novel in terms of how it starts. That's where I got the start for this story. And thinking about that and mentioning that, it's a great way to begin the real behind the scenes breakdown of this series. Going with the first episode, I forgot what I titled it. I titled it Ahsoka's Fall. I'm going to try to remember the episode titles as I'm going along here as well. So episode 1 was Ahsoka's Fall. Now, in this particular episode, as I mentioned, I pulled the beginning from the end of the Ahsoka Tano novel. At the very end of it, you see after she had done her deed on Rada that the Grand Inquisitor showed up to the planet and saw the work that had been done. And rather than go on the hunt himself, I had him more so report his findings to Darth Vader. But he did his research beforehand. He saw everything he could and gathered that it was Ahsoka Tano. He asked Imperials that survived, he looked at Imperial footage, saw who it was, couldn't make out the face perfectly, but he did his research, found out it was Ahsoka Tano, and brought it back to Vader. Now, the reason I had this happen was obviously to move along the plot. I wasn't planning on using the Grand Inquisitor as much. I just needed him to get Ahsoka to Vader. But the reason this is the start I had is because the other start was actually very hard to work with. So the original beginning of the story, I was planning it to be after Mandalore, as you see in Clone Wars Season 7. I was gonna somehow get Ahsoka Tano to Anakin either before, while, or after he was on Mustafar. I didn't have it perfectly planned out. But the hard thing was trying to figure out how to get Ahsoka off that Venator cruiser, whether it be during, before the crash, or whatever you say, to Anakin, who's on Mustafar. Like, one, I don't even know where that planet is, and I want to logically get her from point A to point B. I just don't want to jump her there. If you watch my what ifs, I tend to be very particular in a lot of my decisions. I don't like to just, have one person go from here to there. If I do it, it's just because I really can't think of what else to do in that situation. So I scrapped that original idea and went back here. And the thing that I really was worried about doing was replicating the environment. I've done in so many past what ifs. I have done a lot of what ifs in this particular time period. So I was very much trying to do something different. So in this one, I kept the character count very low. I didn't include a vast rebellion. I used people like Bail Organa, but I didn't want to use Mon Mothma. I didn't want to bring in the Ghost Crew. I didn't want to bring in Captain Rex. I wanted to keep this as personal a story as possible. So the only reoccurring characters you see are going to be Vader and Ahsoka for obvious reasons. Now, that didn't excuse me from using characters that we have seen before. Like I said, I did use Bail Organa. We're going to be talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi in a second as well. But I want it to be the most personal, the least character heavy story, I guess you can say, that I have written. I think I did achieve that to some degree. Now, I had that battle between the two of them in which Ahsoka does turn to the dark side take place on the planet of Wabani. If you don't remember what Wabani is, that's actually the world you see in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. That's where Jyn Erso is taken prisoner in that particular film. And I thought, hey, let's bring it back for this story. You don't really see much of Wabani outside of Rogue One, the Star Wars story, so I wanted to use it again. I thought this planet would be the perfect backdrop. And it was also kind of different, putting Vader in a different situation, because he was on the hunt for Ahsoka, but he did it in a much different style than we're used to. He wasn't hunting her down, he was trying to find her. So he's going to be a lot more secretive about what he does, and having Vader be secretive is a whole new ballpark to work with. And then obviously I have the situation where he turns her, and in doing so, he turns her by making her realize they were both betrayed by the Jedi. Of course, she's not going to accept that Anakin has become Darth Vader. But what if she accepts the fact that they were both betrayed? That's what he's working with. And in the end, it does work out. She does accept falling under his tutelage. But the key thing there is I wanted Ahsoka to accept following Anakin. And you'll see why in a second. I'll explain it when I get to it. But at the end of the episode, he sets her off to go kill Obi-Wan Kenobi. That is the mission she must undertake. And episode 2 is where we see that happen, if I'm not mistaken. So, well, not really. She knows she has to find Kenobi. That's what happens in episode 2. So in episode 2, she knows she has to find Kenobi. She's thinking about all her leads. She remembers that she does have a connection in Bail Organa because before she was found by Vader, she was recruited by Bail. That's why she was on Wabani in the first place. She was freeing rebel prisoners to send back to Organa in his brewing rebellion. She knows that this could be a key in finding Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the reason I did this, obviously, you see in episode 3, you know that Bail Organa does know where Obi-Wan went. He went to Tatooine with Luke Skywalker in tow. And I do drop hints to that mission as well. But there's a reason that didn't play out. And again, we'll get to that in a second. So Ahsoka gets the information he needs from Bail Organa. He tells her why, because it's Ahsoka Tano. At this point, he trusts her more than anybody. Ahsoka's probably the most worthy Jedi he has seen at this moment. So, of course, he's going to say, yeah, I know where Obi-Wan is. He's not going to reveal everything, because why Kenobi's on Tatooine is a need-to-know basis. Ahsoka did not need to know that. He alludes to the mission, but he doesn't outright say it. So, she knows this, and then she proceeds to kill Bail Organa, because as Vader said, kill anybody who sees you. And that is, again, in line with the Force Unleashed game. That is one of the rules he gave Starkiller, was kill anybody that sees you, Imperial and Rebel alike. And I wanted to capture that with this relationship, because it is a secret apprenticeship that she is undertaking at the end of the day. So she kills Bail Organa. At the same time, she gets information about where Kenobi is and the mission that he's undertaking. So she goes to Tatooine, and this was probably my most favorite or the most fun episode to write because there was a bit of filler here. I didn't want her to just go to Tatooine. I wanted there to be some more liveliness to it, and I thought, how can I go to Tatooine and utilize that planet? Obviously, I have to use Mos Eisley Cantina. I can't go there and not use the Cantina. And I don't think I've used it in any past story. I think I might have used it in the very first Luke story, like just a tad bit, but never really went in there and never had Wu here talk, never had some kind of repercussions occur with this location. So that's what I did. I had her go in there looking for Ben Kenobi or Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Wu here says he's heard of Ben Kenobi. As you know, Ben did go to the cantina from time to time, so he knows Ben Kenobi doesn't think about Obi-Wan. I was actually thinking about playing off a joke. If you've seen the Lego Star Wars game or the Lego Star Wars shows, one of those like Freemaker Adventures or something like that. I can't remember what it was, the exact one, but they made a joke about Kenobi where Luke was with him and he was like, you changed your name, but you didn't change your last name. So I was like, I wanted to play with that and make something of it, but at the end of the day, I just kept Wu here going, oh yeah, I don't know who Obi-Wan is, but I know who Ben Kenobi is. He might be the guy's dad because again, that's how old he looks. So Ahsoka goes, but she does have a little fight with a Trandoshan. There was actually another idea that was canned for that scene. So I was gonna make that a named bounty hunter. I was either thinking about making it Bosk or Greedo even. But I decided against both because that goes back to how I didn't want to cram it full of names. I wanted to keep it as personal as possible. So I just made it some random Trandoshan, unnamed, because he was unimportant to the vital of the story. This was really just a filler moment because I wanted to use Mos Eisley Cantina, and I still wanted something to happen before she sees Kenobi. Now, getting into the point where she does see Kenobi, that's where some important parts of this story take place. So she duels Kenobi, and Kenobi does one thing. He alludes that the Sith deal in betrayal, because he finds out, of course, that she has turned to the dark side before they start dueling. She didn't outright go there and try to kill him. So Ahsoka needs to affirm that Anakin's telling the truth, that the Jedi did betray Anakin in the way that he described it. She finds out that they did to an extent, and the duel occurs. Obi-Wan is really trying to preach to Ahsoka, don't trust the Sith. They are treacherous, they are deadly, they deal in betrayal. Ahsoka doesn't want to hear it because, again, what I'm working at is Ahsoka thinks she's with Anakin. Again and again and again. That's what she has to keep telling herself in her head. If she's finally back with Anakin, she has to help Anakin. This leads to her killing Obi-Wan Kenobi, but the key there is she did not ask about the mission. That mission being him guarding the Skywalker child that is Luke on Tatooine. She did not get to that. She let her emotions take over her, and she did completely forget about it in that moment. She remembers it later. The behind the scenes reason I didn't implement that further is because I didn't mean to put that in there. I left it in and was meaning to write it out, but I didn't upon recording it, and I just thought I'll just leave it in there and turn it into a plot point, which eventually I did in the next episode. And in that next episode, which is episode 4, Ahsoka is facing the fact that she forgot to get this information. She tries to hide it. Vader obviously finds out anyway. She has to deal with a punishment. It wasn't that great of a punishment. I wasn't going to have her duel Vader in that moment because I thought that would have been too extreme. But she still had to learn something. So there's a fear that's there. And I'm also really trying to seed within these moments the setup for what happens at the end. So in this moment, she learns she has a new mission. This mission will get her back in some good graces. She has to find the holocron for the Sith Temple on Malachor. Now, she's been set off on this mission. Obviously, this came from Star Wars Rebels. She was sent off on this mission to go find the holocron. But Vader has something very important happen to him in this episode. He's called back to Palpatine. And again, this references back to Force Unleashed, how Palpatine found out Vader had Starkiller in the same way he finds out that Vader had Ahsoka. He doesn't know exactly that it's Ahsoka, obviously, but he does know Vader has something. The biggest evidence being when he finds out how Bail Organa died on the 1083, because he doesn't have 1084 yet. He finds out that everybody there was killed with lightsaber. You automatically would think it was Vader or an Inquisitor, but if either of them were to get on that ship, the only way they would get on it is if they had to fight their way to it, meaning the outside of that ship would have been scorched to high hell because a Star Destroyer would have had to detonate it in some form or fashion. That ship was perfectly fine, meaning whoever got on board was known and had to be acting on the part of the Empire if they slaughtered an entire ship of rebels. So he gets Vader. Vader tells him that it's Ahsoka, and then Palpatine says you have to kill her. That is the planting the seed for the betrayal that you see in the final episode. Now, in that final episode is where I really try my best to get Ahsoka to see hints that betrayal is coming, that her master is not who she thinks he is. The biggest way was the vision. Now, the vision really came up in the spur of the moment as I was writing. I didn't plan it. I was going to have this episode start in a much different fashion, which in that way I can't remember, but I was not going to do the vision. But as I was writing, I was like, man, what if there's like a vision but for the dark side? And what can I do to make Ahsoka really feel this vision? So I thought back to the Clone Wars, and immediately the segment with the sun came up and how the sun corrupted Ahsoka in that moment, turned him, like, I don't know, it was like, didn't exactly turn her dark. It's a weird thing to explain, but I thought back to that, so I was like, maybe she hears the sun's voice. And what I really wanted this vision to do is not only for Ahsoka, but for everyone watching as well, is this real? Is she really hearing the sun, or is this just the dark side playing tricks with her mind? Then you get into the moment where she sees Anakin, and again, this is setting up the foreshadowing that you see. This is foreshadowing the ending of this particular story. So she sees Anakin, she walks to him, Anakin apologizes. She apologizes to Anakin, but then that image of him is shattered when she hears Darth Vader's voice. She turns around and Vader starts to choke her and tells her that she's nothing but a weapon, so on and so forth. But then the vision ends there. What I want people to get from that, and again, like I said, it's a foreshadow, is Ahsoka's there for Anakin, but Vader is the one that's really there. So she gets this situation where she's like, I don't believe this vision. I think the sun was trying to play tricks on me, but it was really, this temple trying to show her where her fate is about to be. Sure, it's like weird to say that in the sense of a dark side entity was trying to preserve her, but she's a dark side of herself at this point, even though it's not like 100% attuned. So that's what I'm trying to set up here. So moving forward to them going to Coruscant, getting the duel between Ahsoka and Vader with Palpatine watching, that is very reminiscent in my view of the battle in episode 6, Vader and Luke as Palpatine watched. Very similar emotions, someone that Anakin knew very well and had a deep connection with. And the key thing I wanted to happen in that moment was Vader not necessarily killing Ahsoka by dealing a crippling blow, stabbing her, slicing her, whatever you have. She is instead almost spared in a way. Like, not a sparing in the sense of I can't kill her, but a sparing in the sense of I cannot strike her down. So Vader instead thrusts her out of a window. And you can say what you want. You can go to Mace Windu route and say that she lived. You can go just the basic route and say she splat as soon as she hit the Coruscant ground. But that was my intention. I wanted to do an Ahsoka lives ending kind of thing. Ahsoka lives ? I have to say. Very similar to the ending of Star Wars Rebels Season 2. How you see her silhouette, or now we know that it was her, walking into that temple on Malachor. And some people had so many questions. Was she still alive? Was she dead? Was that a spirit? And things like that. I want you to get that from this ending. Did she survive the fall? Is she dead? Like, what happens next? That's what I want you to have. And in that regard, I'm not going to tell you what I think happened with Ahsoka after that, because maybe I'll come back to this. Get the Ahsoka Live shirt running for this particular series. So yeah, that is essentially the behind the scenes for this particular series, Ahsoka turned to the dark side. It was a 5-episode series, really fun to write, and it was really fun revisiting it and telling you guys my thought process for it all. Now, the next thing here, ladies and gentlemen, is what the next series will be. I'm going to keep that a secret. It will be up Sunday, so do not fret about that. but it will be a secret until it is uploaded. It could be a continuation of a past series, it could be something brand new, but you'll have to wait until Sunday. Now, while you wait, I highly suggest that you go back, watch the series if you want to. Go watch other series as well, because you never know what might be coming next. And until the next time, may the force of others be with you.